Lady Evelyn Harrow stood alone beneath the chandeliers while the ballroom shimmered around her like a cruel dream. Laughter echoed across the marble hall. Silk gowns brushed against polished floors. Gentlemen bowed. Women whispered behind jeweled fans. Yet not once during the entire evening had her husband looked at her. The Duke of Ashbourne stood near the grand staircase with ministers and noblemen gathered around him, cold and untouchable as winter itself. Tall, severe, impossibly composed. Every woman in the room admired him, and every woman in the room pitied her. Evelyn lowered her eyes when she heard the whispers again. 3 years married and he still treats her like a stranger. They say he spends more time with his horses than his Duchess. A miserable match. Her fingers tightened around her fan though her expression never changed. She had learned long ago how to survive humiliation quietly. At first she had believed marriage would soften him. When she was 18, she had entered Ashbourne Manor full of timid hope. The Duke had been distant even during their wedding ceremony, his grey eyes unreadable beneath the cathedral candles. But she had thought time would build affection. Instead, time built silence. 3 years of formal dinners, separate bedrooms, cold politeness, endless loneliness. The Duke fulfilled every duty expected of a husband except the one she desired most. He protected her reputation, provided every luxury imaginable, and never once raised his voice to her. But he never truly saw her, and somehow that hurt far more. Across the ballroom, the Duke finally glanced in her direction. For one foolish second, hope fluttered inside her chest, then his gaze passed over her entirely. Like she was merely another decoration in the room, the ache inside her deepened. "Your Grace," turned at the unfamiliar voice. A gentleman stood beside her, dressed in deep navy evening attire. His expression carried warmth rare among aristocrats. "I hope you forgive my boldness," he said softly, bowing. "But no lady should stand alone during a waltz." She blinked in surprise. "I assure you I do not mind." "I do," he replied. There was no mockery in his voice, only sincerity. "Lord Adrian Whitmore," he introduced himself. "Recently returned from Vienna." Recognized the name immediately. A respected diplomat, wealthy. Unmarried, dangerously charming. Before she could answer, the music shifted into a graceful waltz. Lord Adrian offered his hand. "Would you honor me with this dance?" The room seemed to pause. Evelyn hesitated. Not because she wished to refuse, but because she suddenly became aware of another gaze upon her, cold, sharp. Watching the Duke for the first time that evening, Damien Ashbourne was looking directly at her. Something unreadable flickered across his face. Still, he said nothing. And so Evelyn placed her hand in another man's. The dance floor glowed beneath candlelight as Adrian guided her effortlessly through the waltz. "You seem surprised someone approached you," he observed gently. "I am. Troubles me." Evelyn managed a faint smile. "You know nothing about me, my lord." "I know enough." His eyes met hers briefly. "I know loneliness when I see it." The word struck deeper than she expected. For years, everyone had noticed her title, her gowns, her quiet manners. No one had noticed her sadness. No one except a man she had met less than 5 minutes ago. Across the ballroom, Damien's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as he watched another man make his wife smile. It should not have bothered him. For years, they had existed peacefully apart. Evelyn never complained, never demanded affection, never interfered with his responsibilities. That arrangement had suited him perfectly. So why did the sight before him feel unbearable? When the dance ended, Adrian kissed Evelyn's gloved hand with respectful elegance. "I hope this will not be our final conversation, Your Grace." Before she could answer, another noblewoman approached Adrian eagerly, pulling him into conversation. Evelyn stepped away quietly, but as she crossed the ballroom, Damien intercepted her near the terrace doors. "You seem entertained tonight." His voice was calm, too calm. Evelyn looked at him carefully. "Is that displeasing to you?" "I merely find it unusual." The words stung more than they should have. Unusual, as though happiness looked unnatural on her. She lifted her chin slightly. "Then perhaps you do not know me as well as you believe." For the first time in years, she walked away from him first, and Damien watched her go. The following weeks brought an unexpected change to London society. Lord Adrian Whitmore began appearing everywhere Evelyn did, at charity concerts, garden parties, art exhibitions, literary salons. Always respectful, always attentive, always noticing her, and society noticed as well. "She laughs more lately. Adrian is utterly enchanted. Duke cannot possibly approve." Evelyn tried not to care about the whispers, yet slowly something inside her began awakening after years asleep. Confidence. She no longer waited endlessly for her husband to acknowledge her presence. She stopped arranging her days around his schedule. She stopped hoping he might someday choose her willingly. Instead, she rediscovered herself. She began painting again, something she had abandoned after marriage. She played piano during evenings instead of dining alone in silence. She rode through Hyde Park at dawn with the wind against her face and felt alive for the first time in years. And the more she withdrew from her husband emotionally, the more Damien noticed her absence. One rainy evening, he entered the manor library expecting solitude. Instead, he found Evelyn seated beside the fire, reading poetry aloud softly to herself. He paused in the doorway. She looked beautiful, not in the ornamental way society praised women. Not because of jewels or gowns, but because she seemed peaceful, untouched by him. The realization unsettled him deeply. "You no longer wait for dinner," he said quietly. Evelyn turned a page calmly. "You are often occupied. You could still join me." A strange silence followed, then she closed the book gently. "For years I did." The words landed with devastating softness. Damien had faced political rivals, financial crises, even scandal without discomfort. Yet one quiet sentence from his wife left him unable to answer. Days later, another blow arrived. At a royal garden gathering, Damien approached a circle of nobles only to hear laughter erupt nearby. Evelyn stood beneath flowering roses with Adrian beside her. She was smiling fully, not politely, not dutifully, genuinely. Damien realized with sudden clarity that he had almost forgotten what her real smile looked like. Adrian handed her a small bouquet of white roses. They reminded me of you, he said warmly. Evelyn laughed softly. You say dangerous things, my lord, only truthful ones. Damien felt something dark twist inside him, jealousy raw and unfamiliar. It followed him through the rest of the evening like a shadow. That night, for the first time in years, he entered the west wing where Evelyn's chambers were located. He stopped outside her door. Inside, he heard faint piano music drifting through candlelit silence. A melancholy melody. He nearly knocked, but his hand never reached the wood because he suddenly understood something terrible. He did not know how to be her husband anymore. The realization haunted him for weeks. Damien began noticing countless things he had ignored before. The way Evelyn tucked loose strands of hair behind her ear while reading, the sadness hidden beneath her polite smiles at formal dinners, the fact that servants brightened whenever she entered a room because she treated them kindly, the softness in her voice when she spoke about books, music, or the sea. She had always possessed warmth. He had simply never stood close enough to feel it, and now another man did. One afternoon, Damien arrived unexpectedly at a countryside estate gathering hosted by his cousin. The moment he entered the drawing room, conversation shifted subtly. Eyes moved toward Evelyn and Adrian seated together near the windows. Too close, too comfortable. Adrian was speaking quietly while Evelyn listened with bright eyes. Damien crossed the room immediately. Lord, Adrian greeted smoothly. Whitmore looked up in visible surprise. I did not expect you today. I am aware. The tension between the two men sharpened instantly. Adrian remained calm. The Duchess was just telling me about the coast near Ashbourne Cliffs. She enjoys the sea, Damien replied before Evelyn could answer. Both Adrian and Evelyn looked startled, because it was true, and because Damien remembered years ago during the first weeks of their marriage, Evelyn had once confessed she missed the ocean terribly. He had not realized he still carried the memory. Evelyn's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. For a moment something vulnerable passed between them, then Adrian stood. The Duchess possesses many lovely qualities worth remembering. The statement sounded polite, but beneath it lay challenge. Damien's gaze hardened. I suggest you remember she is married. Fell around them. Evelyn rose immediately, cheeks pale with embarrassment. My apologies, she said quietly to nearby guests. I believe I require air. She walked away swiftly. Adrian's expression cooled. You humiliate her more than you realize. Damien turned sharply. You presume too much. No, Adrian replied evenly. I simply see what you refuse to. For the first time in years, Damien had no defense. That evening, Evelyn stood alone beside the terrace garden while moonlight silvered the hedges. She heard footsteps behind her. I owe you an apology, Damien said. She did not turn immediately. You embarrass me. I know. Honesty surprised her. Slowly she faced him. He looked different somehow. Less untouchable, more tired. I dislike the way he looks at you, Damien admitted quietly. Evelyn stared at him in disbelief. After years of indifference, this was what finally stirred emotion in him. Lord Adrian looks at me, she said softly. That alone makes him different from you. The words pierced him cleanly. He stepped closer. Evelyn, for years, she interrupted gently, I believed if I became quieter, kinder, more patient, eventually you would love me. Her voice trembled faintly. Loneliness changes people. Felt panic rise for the first time in his controlled life, because he suddenly understood she was slipping beyond his reach. And worse, it was entirely his fault. Winter arrived early that year. Snow covered Ashbourne Manor in white silence while tension grew heavier within its walls. Evelyn spent more time away from London society now. More time reading, writing letters, and planning charitable work in nearby villages. She no longer chased affection, and that frightened Damien more than anger ever could. One evening during a formal dinner, a guest casually remarked, Lord Whitmore speaks very highly of the Duchess these days. Damien's grip tightened around his wine glass. Across the table, Evelyn lowered her eyes quietly. The guest continued carelessly. Some even speculate he intends to court her should circumstances ever permit. The room froze. Damien set his glass down with dangerous calm. That speculation would be unwise. No one spoke afterward. Later that night, Damien found Evelyn in the gallery overlooking the snow-covered grounds. You should not encourage Whitmore, she gave a faint, humorless laugh. Encourage him? He merely treats me kindly. He wants you. You do not? The question shattered the silence between them. Damien stared at her because for the first time he could not deny the truth. He said quietly. Evelyn's breath caught, but pain lingered in her eyes. You had years to say that. I know. His voice held regret so raw it startled even him. He moved closer slowly as though afraid she might vanish. When my father arranged our marriage, I swore I would never become a man ruled by emotion. My parents destroyed each other with affection twisted into cruelty. Looked away briefly, so I kept distance. I believed coldness was safer than love. Listened silently. But somewhere along the way, he continued, you became the center of this house, of my thoughts, of everything I failed to acknowledge. Snow drifted softly beyond the windows. I did not realize what you meant to me until I saw someone else cherishing you openly. The confession broke something inside her, not because it erased the years of loneliness, but because she finally heard truth in his voice. I was so tired of begging silently for scraps of affection, she whispered, Damien's expression tightened with pain. You should never have needed to beg. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. And suddenly Damien crossed the distance between them carefully. Slowly, as though approaching something precious and fragile, he lifted a trembling hand and brushed away the tear with astonishing gentleness. I do not deserve your forgiveness, he murmured, but I cannot endure losing you. Looked into his eyes and saw no coldness left there, only fear, only love arriving too late or perhaps right on time. Weeks passed quietly after that night, not perfect, not magically healed, but changing. Damien began joining Evelyn during morning rides through the snowy countryside. They shared dinners alone without suffocating silence between them. Sometimes he listened while she played piano late into the evening, and sometimes she caught him simply watching her, as though memorizing what he had nearly lost. Then one afternoon Adrian Whitmore arrived at Ashbourne Manor unexpectedly. Evelyn welcomed him warmly into the drawing room while servants prepared tea. Damien entered moments later. The air tightened immediately. Adrian studied them both carefully before offering a faint smile. It seems I have arrived too late, Evelyn blinked softly. Damien remained silent. Adrian stood and approached Evelyn with quiet dignity. You deserve to be loved properly, Your Grace, he said gently. I only wish someone had told your husband sooner. Then he bowed once to Damien. Take care of her. Just like that he left. Evelyn watched the door close behind him. There was sadness there, but gratitude too, because Adrian had reminded her of her own worth when she had nearly forgotten it herself. Damien stepped beside her quietly. I hated him, he admitted. She looked up with faint amusement. I know, but I owe him more than I can admit. Evelyn's gaze softened. Outside, snow began melting beneath the first signs of spring. For the first time since their marriage, Damien reached for her hand without hesitation, not out of duty, not for appearance, but because he wanted to. Evelyn intertwined her fingers with his slowly. The warmth between them felt unfamiliar, tender, real. I cannot change the years behind us, Damien said quietly. She agreed. A shadow of fear crossed his face, then she stepped closer. Perhaps we can change the years ahead. Emotion flickered openly across his expression at last. The mighty Duke of Ashbourne, feared across Parliament and admired across society, looked suddenly vulnerable before only one woman, his wife, the woman he had almost lost because he waited too long to love her aloud. Damien pressed a soft kiss against her forehead as spring light poured through the manor windows, and for the first time since their wedding day, Evelyn no longer felt alone.